The thundering hooves sounded like approaching disaster as Clara Vance's chestnut mare bolted across the sun-scorched Texas prairie, the reins flying free while Clara desperately gripped the saddle horn with both hands, her heart hammering against her ribs as the town of Jefferson grew smaller behind her. The morning had started peacefully enough when she had ridden out to check on her late father's cattle, but a rattlesnake hidden in the tall grass had sent Rosie into a panic, and now Clara found herself careening toward a rocky ravine with no way to stop the terrified animal. Her dark hair whipped loose from its braid, stinging her face as the wind tore past, and through the blur of tears and dust, she saw the edge of the cliff growing closer with each pounding stride. A blur of motion appeared from her left, a powerful bay horse surging alongside her runaway mare, and strong hands reached out to grab Rosie's bridle. The rider pulled hard, his muscles straining against the momentum, and gradually the two horses slowed, coming to a heaving stop mere yards from the crumbling edge of the ravine. Clara's breath came in ragged gasps as she looked down at the 50-foot drop to the jagged rocks below, then turned to face her rescuer. "That was close. Are you all right?" The cowboy's voice was deep and steady despite the exertion, his hazel eyes filled with genuine concern as he kept one hand firmly on Rosie's bridle. Clara's hands trembled as she finally released her death grip on the saddle horn, flexing her aching fingers. "I think so. I cannot thank you enough. Another few seconds and I would have been over that edge." Her voice shook despite her attempt to sound composed. The cowboy swung down from his bay gelding with fluid grace, moving to stand beside Rosie so he could help Clara dismount. Up close, Clara could see he was perhaps 25 or 26, with sun-bronzed skin and dark brown hair that curled slightly at the collar of his worn shirt. A day's worth of stubble shadowed his strong jaw, and when he looked up at her, she felt something shift in her chest that had nothing to do with the terror of moments before. "Let me help you down. Your legs might be a bit unsteady after that ride." He held up his hands, and Clara found herself placing her palms on his broad shoulders as his hands circled her waist. When her boots touched the ground, her knees did indeed buckle slightly, and his grip tightened, steadying her. They stood there for a moment, closer than propriety would normally allow, and Clara caught the scent of leather and sage and something uniquely him. "Thank you," she whispered, stepping back reluctantly. "I am Clara Vance. My father owned the ranch about 3 miles back toward Jefferson." "Owen Xavier," he replied, tipping his hat slightly. "I have been working at the Thornton spread for the past month. I saw you riding out this morning and thought I would check the fence line in this direction." His lips quirked in a slight smile. "Lucky timing, I suppose." Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the April sun beating down on them. "Very lucky indeed. Rosie is usually so calm, but something spooked her badly. I could not get control." Owen walked over to examine the mare, running his hands along her legs and speaking in low, soothing tones. "She seems sound. No injuries that I can see. Whatever scared her, she will settle now." He looked back at Clara with those penetrating eyes. "But I think you should not ride back alone. That was a significant scare for both of you." "I can manage," Clara said, lifting her chin with a pride born from necessity. Since her father's death 6 months ago, she'd been managing the ranch alone, refusing to sell despite pressure from several buyers. At 22, she was considered old enough to handle her own affairs, but that did not mean the town gossips had stopped wagging their tongues about a young unmarried woman living alone on the property. "I have no doubt you can manage most things," Owen said carefully, leading both horses away from the cliff edge. "But it would ease my mind to ride with you, just to make sure Rosie does not bolt again. Besides, I told Mr. Thornton I would be out checking fences until noon. I have plenty of time." Clara wanted to refuse on principle, but the truth was her hands were still shaking, and the thought of Rosie panicking again made her stomach clench with fear. "Very well. I appreciate your concern." She took Rosie's reins from Owen, stroking the mare's neck. "Easy, girl. It's all right now." They walked the horses for a while, letting them cool down and calm completely before mounting up again. Owen kept up a steady stream of conversation, asking about her father's ranch and the cattle she ran. Clara found herself relaxing despite the morning's excitement, drawn to his easy manner and the intelligence in his questions. He was not just being polite, he genuinely understood ranching and seemed interested in how she had been managing alone. My father taught me everything about running cattle before he died, Clara explained as they rode side by side at an easy walk. He never had a son, so he made sure I could handle every aspect of the ranch. Some folks in Jefferson think it is unseemly for a woman to be doing this kind of work, but I love this land. I cannot imagine selling it and moving to some city to live with distant relatives I barely know. Your father sounds like he was a wise man, Owen said, genuine respect in his tone. Too many people get caught up in what they think a woman should or should not do, rather than recognizing capability when they see it. From what I hear at the Thornton place, you have been doing a fine job keeping your father's legacy alive. The praise warmed Clara more than it should have. She'd grown accustomed to skepticism and condescension from most of the men in town, who viewed her ranching efforts as a temporary phase before she either married or failed. You have heard about me? Owen's ears reddened slightly. Jefferson is not that large a town. People talk. But Mr. Thornton speaks highly of your father, and he mentioned you were doing well with the herd. He paused, then added with careful casualness, he also mentioned you had turned down 3 marriage proposals since your father's passing. Clara's eyes flashed. I suppose the town finds that entertaining gossip, men who never gave me a second glance suddenly appearing with proposals once they learned I owned land. I may be alone, but I am not desperate enough to marry for the wrong reasons. I did not mean to offend, Owen said quickly, holding up a hand. Actually, I found it admirable. Shows you have more sense than to be swayed by opportunists. He met her eyes directly. And for what it is worth, I think any man who only noticed you after your father died is a fool. You are not the kind of woman who should be overlooked. The sincerity in his voice made Clara's breath catch. She looked away, focusing on the horizon where the buildings of Jefferson were beginning to take shape. You are bold to say such things to someone you just met. I suppose nearly watching someone die gives a man perspective on being honest, Owen replied. Life is too short and too uncertain out here to dance around the truth. They rode in companionable silence for a while, and Clara found herself studying Owen from the corner of her eye. He sat his horse with the easy confidence of someone born to the saddle, and there was something solid and dependable about him that appealed to her deeply. Most cowboys who drifted through Texas were restless souls, never staying long in one place, but Owen had mentioned working at the Thornton spread for a month, which suggested some stability. As they approached the boundary of her land, Clara pointed out the fence line that separated her property from the open range. My father built this section himself the year before he died. He always said good fences made for good neighbors, even when your neighbor is the prairie itself. Owen examined the fence with an experienced eye. Solid work. You can tell he took pride in it. He looked at the fence posts stretching into the distance, then back at Clara. You mentioned checking on cattle this morning. Did you find any problems? A few strays near the southern edge, but otherwise the herd looked good. Spring has been kind to us so far with the rain. The grass is coming in well. Clara relaxed into discussing the practical matters of ranching, her natural competence showing through. I have about 200 head now. Not as large as some of the spreads around here, but enough to make a living if I am careful. 200 head is nothing to dismiss, Owen said, especially managing them alone. Do you hire hands for roundup and branding? I hire a few men from town when necessary, though I do as much as I can myself. I cannot afford to keep permanent hands. Clara's jaw tightened slightly. Money has been tight since my father's illness. The doctor bills and funeral expenses took most of the savings. Owen nodded understanding. Sickness is expensive, and death even more so. My own father died when I was 18, left my mother and 2 sisters to fend for themselves. I know what it is like to stretch every dollar. Is that why you are working for Mr. Thornton, sending money home? Clara asked, curious about this man who had appeared so suddenly and dramatically in her life. My mother passed 2 years ago, and both my sisters are married now with families of their own. I've been working my way across Texas, saving money with the eventual goal of buying my own piece of land. He smiled self-deprecatingly. Not very exciting, I know. Just a cowboy with dreams of putting down roots. I think that is very sensible, Clara said firmly. Too many men drift without purpose. Having a goal shows character. She hesitated, then added, Mr. Thornton is a good man to work for, fair and honest. If you stay on with him, you will learn a lot and be treated well. They reached the main house of Clara's ranch, a modest but well-maintained structure with a wide porch and a barn nearby. Clara dismounted and led Rosie toward the barn, with Owen following. As she began unsaddling the mare, Owen moved to help without asking, working in the easy rhythm of someone comfortable around horses and barn work. "You do not have to help," Clara said, though she made no move to stop him. "I have taken enough of your time today." "I do not mind. Besides, after what happened, I want to make sure Rosie is properly settled." Owen hung the saddle on the rack, then began rubbing down the mare with practiced efficiency. "She gave you quite a scare today." Clara worked on the opposite side of the horse, their hands occasionally brushing as they moved around Rosie. Each touch sent an awareness through Clara that she tried to ignore but could not quite manage. She did. "I hate to admit it, but I was terrified. I've ridden since I was 6 years old, but I've never lost control like that before." "Fear is not weakness," Owen said quietly. "It is proof you understand the danger. Only fools have no fear." He finished with Rosie and moved to care for his own horse, giving the bay a thorough rub-down in fresh water. "What was your father's name? You have mentioned him several times, and I would like to know." "Charles Vance. He was one of the first settlers in this area, came to Texas in 1855 when he was just 20. He built this ranch from nothing, survived Comanche raids, droughts, and everything else this land could throw at him." Clara's voice was thick with emotion. "He was the strongest man I ever knew, which is why it was so hard watching consumption slowly take his strength away." Owen finished with his horse and turned to face Clara fully. "He must have been strong to raise a daughter like you. I can see his legacy in your determination." "Thank you," Clara said softly. She hesitated, then added, "Would you like to come inside for some coffee? It is the least I can do after you saved my life." A smile spread across Owen's face, transforming his features from merely handsome to genuinely striking. "I would like that very much." Inside the house, Clara busied herself with the coffee pot while Owen looked around the main room with respectful interest. The space was simple but comfortable, with furniture that showed years of use and care. A faded daguerreotype on the mantel showed a younger Clara with a stern-looking man who had the same determined chin and direct gaze. "Your father?" Owen asked, moving closer to examine the image. "Yes, taken about 5 years ago when a photographer passed through Jefferson. My father was not one for sitting still for pictures, but I convinced him." Clara brought 2 cups of coffee to the table, steam rising in lazy curls. "I am glad I have it now." They sat across from each other at the worn wooden table, and Clara was struck by how natural it felt to have Owen in her home. She had been alone for so long, keeping everyone at arm's length to avoid the matchmakers and opportunists, but Owen's presence felt different. Comfortable, right. "Tell me about your family," Clara said, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. "You mentioned sisters. Are you close?" Owen's expression softened. "Very close. Sarah is the oldest, 2 years younger than me. She married a shopkeeper in Austin and has 3 children now. Margaret is 22, same as you, and she married a farmer near San Antonio last year. They are expecting their first child this summer." He sipped his coffee. "I try to visit when I can, but work keeps me moving around." "It must be hard being away from them," Clara observed. "It is, but they understand. I need to build something of my own before I can settle down." Owen set down his cup, his eyes meeting hers. "Though after this morning, I find myself thinking that maybe I have been in the wrong places, looking for the wrong opportunities." Clara's heart beat faster. "What do you mean?" "I mean that sometimes opportunity appears when you least expect it. Sometimes it appears on a runaway horse heading for a cliff." Owen's voice was low and sincere. "I know we just met, and you have no reason to trust a drifting cowboy you barely know, but I would like to see you again, Clara, if you would allow it." Clara knew she should be cautious, should protect herself from potential heartbreak or ulterior motives, but looking into Owen's honest eyes, she found herself wanting to take the risk. "I would like that as well, but I need you to understand something. I will not give up my ranch for anyone. This land is my home, my legacy. If that is a problem, then it is better we know now." "That is not a problem," Owen said firmly. "I would never ask you to give up what is yours, what your father built." He reached across the table and after a moment's hesitation, Clara placed her hand in his. His palm was calloused from hard work, warm and strong. "I admire your independence, Clara. I do not want to take that from you. I want to be part of it, if you will let me." The moment stretched between them, full of possibility and promise. Finally, Clara squeezed his hand gently before withdrawing. "Then I suppose you should plan on coming to dinner tomorrow evening. I make a decent stew, and we can talk more, get to know each other properly." Owen's smile could have lit the entire prairie. "I will be here. What time?" 6 o'clock, and do not be late, or I will feed your portion to the dog." Clara's tone was stern, but her eyes sparkled with humor. "You have a dog? I did not see one earlier." "Old Blue is probably sleeping under the porch. He's getting on in years and does not move much anymore unless food is involved." Clara walked Owen to the door, suddenly reluctant to see him leave despite knowing he needed to get back to his work. On the porch, Owen turned to face her, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the yard. "Thank you for the coffee, and for trusting me enough to invite me back. I know that could not have been easy, given how we met." "You saved my life," Clara said simply. "That earned some trust, but I will admit I do not usually invite cowboys I barely know to dinner. You are something of an exception." "I am honored to be an exception." Owen settled his hat on his head, then mounted his horse with easy grace. "Until tomorrow evening, then. And Clara, be careful out riding until we figure out what spooked Rosie. I would hate for lightning to strike twice." "I will be careful," Clara promised. She watched as Owen rode away, his figure gradually diminishing in the distance until he disappeared over a rise. Only then did she allow herself to lean against the porch post, a smile spreading across her face that she could not have suppressed if she tried. Old Blue emerged from under the porch, a grizzled hound with more gray than brown in his muzzle. He whuffed softly and pressed against Clara's leg. "I know, Blue. I'm being foolish, getting excited over a man I just met." She scratched behind the dog's ears. "But there is something different about him, something real." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur as Clara threw herself into preparations for the next day with more energy than she had felt in months. She cleaned the already tidy house, checked her meager pantry to plan the meal, and even dug out one of her better dresses to air out. It had been so long since she had cared about impressing anyone that she felt almost like a stranger to herself. That evening, as the sun set in streaks of orange and purple across the Texas sky, Clara sat on her porch with Blue at her feet and allowed herself to remember the feeling of Owen's hands on her waist, steadying her, the strength in his grip, and the genuine concern in his eyes. She had been alone for so long, convinced she would have to choose between the ranch and companionship, but maybe, just maybe, there was another option she had not considered. The next day seemed to crawl by with agonizing slowness. Clara rode out early to check the herd, this time carrying her father's rifle and keeping Rosie to a careful walk. She found no signs of what had spooked the mare the day before, but she remained vigilant, Owen's warning echoing in her mind. When she returned to the house around noon, she had just enough time to prepare the stew and make herself presentable before 6 o'clock arrived. She had just finished changing into her good dress, a simple blue calico that brought out the color of her eyes, when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Her heart jumped, and she forced herself to walk calmly to the door rather than rush out like an overexcited schoolgirl. Old Blue beat her to it, his tail wagging as he recognized Owen's horse. Owen dismounted carrying a small bundle wrapped in cloth. He had clearly made an effort with his appearance as well, wearing a clean shirt and vest, his hair still damp from washing. When he saw Clara in the doorway, his expression made her feel beautiful in a way that no mirror ever had. "You look lovely," he said, his voice slightly rough. "I hope I am not too early. I may have ridden a bit faster than necessary." "You are right on time," Clara assured him, warmth spreading through her chest. "What do you have there?" Owen held up the bundle. "Mrs. Thornton heard I was coming to dinner and insisted on sending fresh bread. She is a firm believer that no meal is complete without good bread." He grinned. "She also gave me quite the interrogation about my intentions, so be warned that the entire Thornton household knows I am courting you." Clara felt her cheeks heat. "Courting? That's quite presumptuous, Mr. Xavier." "Would you prefer I call it something else?" Owen asked, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Because from where I stand, when a man nearly watches a woman die, saves her life, and then cannot stop thinking about her for an entire day and night, And when that woman invites him to dinner despite having every reason to be cautious. I would say courting is exactly what is happening. Clara could not help but laugh at his directness. Well, when you put it that way, come inside before the stew gets cold and Mrs. Thornton's bread goes to waste. The evening passed in a glow of conversation and laughter that felt as natural as breathing. They talked about everything and nothing, discovering shared opinions on topics from the best way to train a horse to their favorite seasons on the prairie. Owen told stories about his travels across Texas, painting vivid pictures of the different towns and ranches where he had worked. Clara shared memories of growing up on the ranch, of her father teaching her to rope and ride and shoot. He wanted me to be able to defend myself in the ranch, Clara explained as they finished the meal. After the Comanche raids in the 50s, he was determined that I would never be helpless. He made sure I could outshoot most of the men in Jefferson by the time I was 16. I would like to see that, Owen said with genuine interest. Maybe tomorrow you could show me? I fancy myself a decent shot, but I have a feeling you might humble me. Maybe I will, Clara said, pleased by his interest, rather than feeling threatened as so many men seem to when confronted with a woman who could shoot. Do you have time tomorrow? I thought you were working for Mr. Thornton. Owen's expression grew slightly sheepish. Actually, I had a conversation with Mr. Thornton this morning. Told him about rescuing you and about wanting to call on you properly. He is a good man, Clara. He gave me his blessing and said I could have the next 2 days off to sort out my personal affairs. As he put it, he did? Clara was touched by the older rancher's kindness. Robert Thornton had been a friend of her father's, and while he had offered to buy her ranch several times, he had always been respectful when she refused. That was generous of him. He also said something else, Owen continued, his tone growing more serious. He said your father was one of the best men he ever knew, and that any man who wanted to court Charles Vance's daughter had better be worthy of the honor. He told me that if I did anything to hurt you, he would personally see to it that I never worked in this part of Texas again. Clara felt tears prick her eyes at the evidence of her father's friendship extending beyond the grave. Mr. Thornton is a good man. He is, and he is right to be protective of you. Owen reached across the table again, this time covering Clara's hand with his own. I want you to know that I take this seriously, Clara. I am not a man who plays with people's feelings. When I said I wanted to court you, I meant it with every intention of seeing where this could lead. Clara turned her hand over, lacing her fingers with Owen's. I am not good at this. I have never been courted properly. The few boys who showed interest when I was younger lost interest when they realized I wanted to run a ranch, not run a household in town. And the men who have proposed since my father's death only wanted the land. She met his eyes. I need to know this is real, Owen. I cannot afford to give my heart to someone who will leave. I'm not going anywhere, Owen said with quiet intensity. Clara, I've been drifting for 8 years, working ranch after ranch, saving money and telling myself I was looking for the perfect piece of land to call my own. But today, sitting here with you, I realize I have been looking for the wrong thing. Land is just land. It is the people who matter, the connections we make, the lives we build together. That's a pretty speech, Clara said softly, her throat tight with emotion. But words are easy. How do I know you mean it? Owen was quiet for a long moment, then he released her hand and sat back in his chair. You are right to be cautious. I am asking you to trust me based on 1 day of acquaintance and some pretty words. That's not fair to you. He met her eyes squarely. So here's what I propose. Let me prove myself to you. Let me help around your ranch, show you I'm serious about this. I will still work for Mr. Thornton, but my free time is yours if you want it. No promises, no pressure. Just 2 people getting to know each other and seeing where it leads. Clara considered his offer, her practical nature warring with the part of her that wanted to throw caution to the wind and believe in the possibility of something real. Finally, she nodded. All right. But I warn you, I am not an easy woman to impress. I have high standards. I would expect nothing less from Charles Vance's daughter, Owen said with a grin. So when do I start? Tomorrow morning, if you are serious. I need to ride out and check the fence line on the eastern edge of the property. It has been neglected, and I suspect there are sections that need repair. Could take most of the day. I will be here at dawn, Owen promised. True to his word, Owen appeared the next morning, just as the sun was breaking over the horizon, bringing with him tools borrowed from the Thornton ranch, and an energy that made Clara's heart lift. They spent the day riding the fence line together, stopping to make repairs where needed. Owen worked with focused efficiency, never complaining about the hard labor or the unforgiving Texas sun. He also respected Clara's knowledge and experience, asking her opinion rather than assuming he knew better. By late afternoon, they had covered most of the eastern boundary and made significant progress on the repairs. They stopped to rest in the shade of a massive oak tree, their horses grazing nearby while they shared the lunch Clara had packed. "You are good at this," Clara observed, watching Owen examine a piece of fence wire with practiced eye. "Really good. You have worked on enough ranches that you could probably run your own right now." Owen shrugged, a slight smile playing at his lips. "I have learned from a lot of good men over the years. Each ranch teaches you something different, but knowing how to do something and having the opportunity to put that knowledge to use on your own land are two different things." "Is that really what you want? Your own ranch?" Clara pulled up a blade of grass, twisting it between her fingers. "Or is that just something you tell yourself because it sounds like a proper goal?" The question seemed to catch Owen off guard. He was quiet for a moment, staring out across the rolling prairie. "I thought it was what I wanted, but I'm starting to realize that I have been confusing ownership with belonging. I wanted my own land because I thought that would give me a sense of home, of purpose. But being here with you these past 2 days, I have felt more at home than I have in years, and I do not own a single acre." Clara's breath caught at the raw honesty in his voice. "Owen." He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his hazel eyes made her heart race. "I know it is too soon to say things like this. We barely know each other. But I have never been one to hide what I'm feeling, and right now I'm feeling like maybe I've been looking in all the wrong places for what I really needed." "And what do you think you really needed?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone to build something with. Not just land or a house or a herd of cattle, but a life, a partnership." Owen shifted closer, close enough that Clara could see the flecks of gold in his eyes. "Someone who understands what it means to work hard and sacrifice for something you believe in. Someone who would not expect me to be anything other than what I am." "A drifting cowboy with dreams of putting down roots," Clara said, echoing his words from their first meeting. "A cowboy who thinks maybe he has found a reason to stop drifting," Owen corrected gently. They were close enough now that Clara could feel the warmth radiating from his body, could count the stubble on his jaw. Her heart hammered in her chest, and she knew she was standing at a crossroads. She could pull back, protect herself, keep him at a safe distance while she took time to be sure. Or she could lean into this feeling, trust her instincts about this man who had appeared in her life so dramatically. Clara had never been one to play it safe. She closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to Owen's in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened as he responded. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb stroking her cheek with a tenderness that made her chest ache. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I was hoping you would do that," he murmured. "I've been wanting to kiss you since yesterday, but I did not want to overstep." "I do not usually kiss men I have known for 2 days," Clara admitted, her voice shaky. "But nothing about this has been usual from the start." "No," Owen agreed, pulling back slightly so he could see her face. "But I am not complaining, are you?" Clara shook her head, a smile spreading across her face. "Not even a little bit." They spent the rest of the afternoon finishing the fence repairs, but the atmosphere between them had shifted into something charged and exciting. Every accidental touch sent sparks through Clara's body, and she caught Owen watching her with an expression that made her feel seen in a way she never had before. As the sun began to set, and they rode back toward the house, Clara found herself thinking about the future, in a way she had not allowed herself to in months. Since her father's death, she had been so focused on survival, on proving she could manage alone, that she had not let herself consider what it might be like to share her life with someone. But Owen made her want to imagine that possibility. Over the following weeks, Owen became a constant presence in Clara's life. He continued working for Mr. Thornton during the days, but every spare moment was spent at Clara's ranch, helping with the endless tasks that came with running the property. He mended fences, helped brand calves, broke a wild horse that Clara had been nervous about approaching, and proved himself invaluable in dozens of ways. But more than the practical help, it was the companionship that Clara treasured. After so many months of loneliness, of shouldering every burden alone, having someone to share both the work and the quiet moments felt like a gift she had not known she needed. They would sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the sunset while discussing their days, their dreams, their fears. Owen talked about his family, about growing up poor but loved, about the drive to make something of himself that had sent him wandering across Texas. Clara shared memories of her father, of the lessons he had taught her, of the grief she still carried like a stone in her chest. "Do you miss him every day?" Owen asked one evening about 6 weeks after they met. They were sitting close together on the porch steps, his arm around her shoulders while Old Blue snored at their feet. "Every single day," Clara admitted. "Sometimes I turn to tell him something and then I remember he is not here. It catches me off guard every time." She leaned into Owen's warmth. "But it is getting easier. Having you here helps. It makes the house feel less empty." "I am glad I can help," Owen said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Your father would be proud of you, Clara, of how you have kept this place running, how you have held on to his legacy." "I hope so." Clara was quiet for a moment, then asked the question that had been weighing on her mind. "Owen, what happens when Mr. Thornton does not need you anymore? When the work slows down? Will you move on to the next ranch?" Owen was silent for so long that Clara began to regret asking. Finally, he shifted so he could look at her directly. "I need to tell you something, and I probably should have mentioned it before now. I gave Mr. Thornton notice 2 weeks ago. I will be done working for him at the end of the month." Clara's stomach dropped. "You're leaving?" "No," Owen said quickly, taking her hands in his. "No, I'm not leaving. I'm staying in Jefferson. I've been talking to the bank about a loan, using my savings as collateral. There's a small property for sale about 2 miles from here. Nothing fancy, just 40 acres with a cabin. I want to buy it, start building my own herd." Relief and excitement warred in Clara's chest. "Owen, that is wonderful. Why did you not tell me?" "Because I did not want you to think I was trying to establish myself here as some kind of business rival, or that I had ulterior motives about your ranch." Owen's expression was earnest. "I want to be clear, Clara. I am buying that land because I want to build a life here, near you. But your ranch is yours. I'm not trying to position myself to take it over or merge it with mine or any of the schemes you have probably heard from other men." Clara felt tears burn her eyes. "You bought land near me so you could stay." "I would buy land on the moon if it meant being close to you," Owen said with a crooked smile. "I love you, Clara. I have loved you probably since that first day when you looked at me with those fierce blue eyes and thanked me for saving your life. I tried to tell myself it was too fast, too soon, but my heart did not care about the timeline. It knew what it wanted." "I love you too," Clara whispered, the words feeling both terrifying and perfect on her lips. "I tried not to. I tried to be practical and cautious and protect myself, but you are impossible not to love." Owen pulled her into a kiss that was deeper and more passionate than any they had shared before. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he kept his arms tight around her. "Marry me, Clara. I know we have not been courting long by conventional standards, but out here we make our own rules. We could help each other build our ranches, support each other through hard times. We would be partners in everything." Clara's heart soared, but her practical nature made her ask, "What about your land? If we married, would we live there or here?" "Here," Owen said without hesitation. "This is your home, your father's legacy. I would not ask you to leave it. We can use my land to expand the grazing area, run more cattle, or we can sell it and invest the money in improvements here. Whatever you want." "I want you," Clara said simply. "I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep in your arms every night. I want to build a life together, raise children who will love this land as much as I do. Yes, Owen, yes, I will marry you." The joy on Owen's face was so pure it made Clara's chest ache. He lifted her off her feet, spinning her around while she laughed and clung to his shoulders. Old Blue woke up and barked, excited by the commotion, and the whole scene felt like something out of a dream. They were married 3 weeks later in Jefferson's small church, with Mr. and Mrs. Thornton standing as witnesses along with half the town. Clara wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved all these years, and Owen wore a new suit that Mr. Thornton had insisted on buying as a wedding gift. As Clara walked down the aisle, she saw her future husband waiting for her with tears in his eyes, and her heart felt so full she thought it might burst. The Reverend spoke about love and partnership, about the challenges and rewards of building a life together on the Texas frontier. When it came time for vows, Owen's voice was steady and sure as he promised to love and cherish Clara for all his days. Clara's voice shook slightly with emotion, but her words were no less sincere as she pledged her love in return. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Owen's kiss was both tender and possessive, a promise of all the kisses to come. The congregation erupted in applause, and Clara felt the warmth of community acceptance wash over her. These people who had watched her struggle alone for so long seemed genuinely happy to see her find love and partnership. The reception was held at the Thornton Ranch, with tables laden with food and a makeshift dance floor set up in the barn. Owen whirled Clara around to fiddle music, neither of them particularly graceful dancers, but both grinning like fools. Mrs. Thornton pulled Clara aside at one point, pressing a worn recipe book into her hands. "Your mother gave this to me when she married your father," the older woman said, her eyes misty. "Said she wanted me to have it in case anything happened to her. I think she would want you to have it now, as you start your own family." Clara clutched the book to her chest, overwhelmed by the connection to the mother she barely remembered. "Thank you. This means more than you know." "Your parents would be so proud," Mrs. Thornton said, squeezing Clara's hand. "And that young man of yours is good people. He will take care of you." "We will take care of each other," Clara corrected gently, and Mrs. Thornton smiled. "Even better." As the sun set on their wedding day, Owen and Clara rode back to the ranch that was now truly theirs together. The house glowed with lamplight, welcoming them home, and as Owen lifted Clara over the threshold, she felt a sense of rightness settle over her. "Welcome home, Mrs. Xavier," Owen murmured against her hair. "I like the sound of that," Clara admitted, "though I am keeping Vance for ranch business. This is still the Vance ranch." "I would not want it any other way," Owen assured her. He set her down carefully, his hands lingering at her waist. "Are you happy?" "Happier than I ever thought I could be," Clara said honestly. "When my father died, I thought I would spend the rest of my life alone, fighting to keep this place running. I never imagined someone like you would ride into my life." "On a runaway horse," Owen added with a grin. "On a runaway horse," Clara agreed, laughing. "Maybe I should thank Rosie for bolting. If she had not, we might never have met." "I like to think we would have found each other eventually," Owen said, growing serious. "Some things are just meant to be." That night, as they lay together in the bed that had been Clara's alone for so long, she traced the line of Owen's jaw in the moonlight, streaming through the window. "I was so scared when Rosie bolted. I thought I was going to die. But if I had, I would have died never knowing this feeling, never knowing what it was like to be loved like this." "You are never going to have to wonder again," Owen promised, pulling her close. "I'm going to love you every day for the rest of our lives, Clara. That is a vow I intend to keep." The first year of their marriage was filled with hard work and harder-won rewards. They combined their resources, using the money from the sale of Owen's small property to buy breeding stock and improve the ranch infrastructure. Owen proved to be everything Clara could have hoped for in a partner, treating her opinions with respect and never trying to diminish her role in running the ranch that bore her family name. There were challenges, of course. A drought that summer tested their water resources and forced them to drive the cattle to better grazing land. A conflict with a neighboring rancher over water rights that required careful negotiation to resolve. The everyday struggles of making a living in an unforgiving landscape. But through it all, they faced each problem together, their partnership growing stronger with each obstacle overcome. In the spring of 1880, just over a year after their wedding, Clara discovered she was pregnant. She told Owen one evening after supper, watching nervously for his reaction. His whoop of joy and the way he immediately pulled her into his arms, careful of her still flat belly, eased any fears she might have had. "A baby," he kept repeating, wonder in his voice. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Clara asked, though his reaction made the answer obvious. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Owen said, kneeling so he was eye level with her stomach. "Hello in there, little one. Your mama and I cannot wait to meet you." The pregnancy was not easy. Clara suffered from terrible morning sickness for the first few months and struggled to keep up with the ranch work as her belly grew. Owen took on more and more of the physical labor, hiring additional help when necessary, always insisting that Clara rest more. "I am pregnant, not dying," Clara protested one afternoon when Owen tried to take over mucking out the stables. "I know, but I also know you well enough to know that you will work yourself into exhaustion if I do not intervene," Owen countered. "Please, love, let me take care of things. You are growing our child. That is work enough." In late November, as the first cold winds began to blow across the prairie, Clara went into labor. Owen rode like the devil himself was chasing him to fetch the doctor from Jefferson, then paced outside the bedroom door while the doctor and Mrs. Thornton attended to Clara. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Owen heard Clara's screams of pain and felt utterly helpless, praying harder than he had ever prayed in his life. Finally, as the sun reached its peak the following afternoon, a baby's cry rang out. Owen burst through the door to find Clara exhausted but smiling, cradling a tiny bundle in her arms. "A son," she said, her voice hoarse but triumphant. "We have a son, Owen." Owen approached slowly, almost reverently, staring down at the red-faced infant who was waving tiny fists in the air. "He is perfect. You are perfect." He kissed Clara's forehead, then carefully touched one finger to his son's hand. The baby grasped it with surprising strength, and Owen felt his heart crack open with a love he had not known was possible. They named him Charles Owen Xavier, after both their fathers, but from the start, everyone called him Charlie. He was a healthy, robust baby with his mother's blue eyes and his father's dark hair. As the months passed, Charlie became the center of their world, his laughter filling the house that had been silent for so long. 2 years later, Clara gave birth to a daughter they named Margaret Rose, after Owen's mother and the wildflowers that bloomed on the prairie each spring. And 2 years after that, another son, Thomas, completed their family. The ranch prospered under their joint stewardship. Word spread that the Xavier Ranch was honest and fair in its dealings, and they built relationships with other ranchers based on mutual respect. Owen's easy nature and Clara's sharp business sense proved to be a formidable combination. They expanded their herd to over 500 head, becoming one of the most successful medium-sized operations in East Texas. On quiet evenings, after the children were in bed, Owen and Clara would still sit on the porch, his arm around her shoulders while they watched the sunset over the land they had built together. Old Blue had passed away peacefully in his sleep a few years earlier, but they had gotten a new dog, a young hound named Scout that the children adored. "Do you ever think about that day?" Clara asked one such evening. "When Rosie bolted and you caught her?" "All the time," Owen admitted. "I think about what might have happened if I had ridden in a different direction that morning. If I had been a few minutes later. If you had fallen before I could reach you." He tightened his arm around her. "It terrifies me to think how close I came to never knowing you. But you did catch her. You did save me." Clara turned to kiss him softly. "And you have been saving me every day since, in ways big and small." "That works both ways," Owen said. "You saved me too, Clara. I was drifting, looking for purpose in all the wrong places. You gave me a home, a family, a reason to stay. You gave me everything." Years passed in a blur of seasons, of children growing and cattle thriving and love deepening. They faced hard times together, like the terrible winter of 1885, when they lost nearly a quarter of their herd to cold and disease. They celebrated good times together, like when Charlie, at 16, won the roping competition at the Jefferson Fair, or when Margaret, at 14, sold her first piece of embroidery to a merchant in town. They grew older together, silver threading through their hair and lines deepening around their eyes. But when Owen looked at Clara, he still saw the fierce young woman on a runaway horse, the woman who had captured his heart in an instant and never let go. And when Clara looked at Owen, she still saw the cowboy who had appeared out of nowhere to save her life, and then stayed to share it. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party at the ranch. Charlie was 23 now, married with a child of his own and running much of the ranch operation alongside his parents. Margaret, at 21, had married a banker from Jefferson and lived in town, visiting often with her husband and infant daughter. Thomas, 19 and restless, was talking about trying his hand at cattle driving up to Kansas, and while Clara worried, she understood his need to see something of the world before settling down. As the party wound down and the last guest departed, Owen and Clara found themselves alone on the porch once more, the place where they had spent so many evenings over the years. 25 years, Clara marveled, leaning her head on Owen's shoulder. It seems impossible that so much time has passed. Best 25 years of my life, Owen said simply, and I'm looking forward to the next 25. We are getting old, Clara said with a laugh. I'm 47 years old, Owen. My bones creak when I get out of bed in the morning. My bones creak too, Owen admitted, but I do not care. As long as I get to creak right alongside you, I am happy. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one over the Texas prairie. In the distance, they could hear cattle lowing softly and the murmur of Charlie talking to his wife in the guest house they had built a few years back. Scout was asleep at their feet, his paws twitching as he dreamed. I have been thinking, Clara said eventually. Charlie is ready to take over more responsibility. He knows this ranch as well as we do, maybe better in some ways. What would you think about stepping back a bit? Not retiring completely, but letting him handle more of the day-to-day operations. Owen considered this. Are you sure? This ranch has been your whole life. This ranch has been part of my life, Clara corrected. But you and our children are my life, and I would like to spend more time just being with you, without always worrying about cattle and fences and water rights. We have earned a bit of rest, do not you think? I think that sounds perfect, Owen agreed. He stood, pulling Clara to her feet. But right now, I want to dance with my wife. There is no music, Clara protested, even as she moved into his arms. We do not need music, Owen said, and he began to sway slowly, guiding her in a gentle circle on the porch. Clara laughed and let him lead, her head resting against his chest where she could hear the steady beat of his heart. They danced in the starlight, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life that exceeded anything either could have imagined. Around them, the ranch they had nurtured together hummed with life, a testament to their hard work and partnership. Inside the house, photographs documented the journey from that first terrifying day to this moment of peace and contentment. Thank you, Clara whispered. For what? Owen asked. For catching my horse all those years ago, for staying, for loving me. Clara pulled back to look up at him. For everything. Thank you for letting me catch you, Owen replied, his eyes shining with emotion, and for loving me back. I know I am just a cowboy who happened to be in the right place at the right time, but you made me feel like I was exactly who I was supposed to be. You are exactly who you were supposed to be, Clara said firmly. You are my husband, my partner, the father of my children. You are the love of my life. They kissed there on the porch, not with the desperate passion of new love, but with the deep affection of a couple who had weathered life's storms together and emerged stronger. When they finally went inside, hand in hand, it was to a house filled with memories and love, a home they had built together from the foundation of trust and respect. In the years that followed, they did indeed step back from the daily operations of the ranch, though neither could ever fully retire. They were still there to offer advice and lend a hand when needed, but Charlie proved more than capable of running things. They watched with pride as their grandchildren grew, teaching them the same lessons about hard work and integrity that had guided their own lives. Thomas eventually returned from his adventures up north, settling on a piece of land adjacent to the main ranch and starting his own small herd. Margaret and her husband built a successful business in town, and their children often spent summers at the ranch, learning to ride and rope just as their mother had. Owen and Clara grew old together with grace and gratitude, never taking for granted the gift they had been given in finding each other. On warm evenings, you could still find them on the porch, sitting close together while they watched the sun set over the Texas prairie they both loved. When Owen was 72, he fell ill with pneumonia during a particularly harsh winter. Clara nursed him with fierce determination, refusing to accept that death might take him from her. And perhaps her will was enough, because he recovered, though more slowly than either would have liked. You scared me, Clara told him when he was finally well enough to sit up in bed and complain about being confined indoors. Do not do that again. I'm not going anywhere without you, Owen promised, taking her hand. We made a deal, remember? We are in this together until the end. Good, Clara said firmly, because I am not done with you yet. They had 7 more good years together, years filled with the joy of watching their family grow and prosper. They celebrated the births of great-grandchildren and the marriages of grandchildren. They saw the ranch continue to thrive under Charlie's leadership, knowing that the legacy they had built would continue for generations. On a warm spring evening in 1909, Clara and Owen sat together on their beloved porch, watching the wildflowers bloom across the prairie. Clara was 75 now, her hair white as cotton and her hands gnarled from decades of hard work. Owen was 79, moving more slowly than he once had, but with the same warm smile that had captured Clara's heart so many years ago. Do you remember that day? Clara asked, though she did not need to specify which day she meant. They had relived that first meeting countless times over the years. Every detail, Owen said. The terror in your eyes, the way the wind whipped your hair, the sound of hooves and your horse's panicked breathing, and that moment when I caught the bridle and knew everything was going to be all right. That was close. Are you all right? Clara quoted softly, repeating the first words he had ever said to her. I fell in love with you right then, I think. I did not realize it at the time, but my heart knew. My heart knew too, Owen agreed. I looked at you, fierce and frightened and so beautiful, and I thought this woman is going to change my life. I just did not know how completely. No regrets? Clara asked, though she knew the answer. Not a single one, Owen said emphatically. Every day with you has been a gift, Clara. Even the hard days, the scary days, the days when we were not sure we would make it through. I would live them all again if it meant ending up right here, right now, with you. They sat in peaceful silence as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere in the distance they could hear their great-grandchildren playing, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. The ranch was alive with family, with love, with the future they had worked so hard to build. Clara reached over and took Owen's hand, their fingers interlacing with the ease of 5 decades of practice. I love you, Owen Xavier, today and always. I love you, Clara Xavier, Owen replied, my beautiful runaway bride. As the stars began to emerge in the deepening twilight, they remained there together, 2 souls who had found each other in the vast expanse of the Texas prairie and built a love story that would be remembered by their descendants for generations. They had started with a moment of danger, a cowboy catching a runaway horse before disaster struck, and transformed it into a lifetime of partnership, devotion, and enduring love. The ranch they had nurtured together would continue long after they were gone, worked by the hands of children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried forward the values of hard work, integrity, and family. But more than the land or the cattle or the buildings, their true legacy was the love they had shared, a love born in a moment of crisis and strengthened through years of choosing each other, day after day, season after season, until the end of their days. And on that porch where they had spent so many evenings, where Owen had first told Clara he loved her, and where they had watched their children grow and their dreams come true, they sat together as the night fell softly around them, content in the knowledge that their story, their love, would endure.